Hello and welcome to this video for today. Whether you're here for the first time or you're returning, hope you will enjoy. I'm discussing whether you should count counterspells in your removal slot. So this debate or this question or whatnot sort of comes up quite a bit with a few people. If you're in blue, should you count your counter spells as part of your removal suite? And it's tough to answer that, and essentially, unfortunately, it's kind of like not completely clear. In mono blue, I would say yes, because the fact is, even though they've printed a couple things now, like the new spell that exiles an artifact or a creature and gives the opponent a 4/4, whatnot, and a couple other spells that are around, that have been quite good, I still would consider those spells, counter spells, as part of your removal suite in that deck, and I would try to keep to a certain number. Now, certain decks are a bit different, and some decks want more and some decks want less. It does depend on what you're doing. If you're a heavy control deck, or if you're, a more combo deck that's trying to protect its win condition, or you're in CEDH or whatnot, it does depend on the meta and whatnot and all that other stuff. But again, for the most part, in those decks, because again you haven't got as many other options that deal with artifacts, enchantments, and planeswalkers, and even really creatures. Yes, you've got a couple options that deal with creatures, and Reality Shift is quite a good one, and I still would use that in many blue decks if you're not in white. So I would consider a couple of cards that are in those colors to be quite good. I'm not a big fan of counterspells myself. I just find that if you have them, yeah, they're really good at the time when you need them. And that's where most people go, well, if I don't have it when I need it, sort of thing, then I might have it for something else. But in my view, I always seem to just go, okay, cool, I just drew a counterspell that does nothing to help me with the problem that I'm currently having. It's not like there's that much more worse that can come up. Like, there's a few things here and there, but there's just not enough, in my opinion, that sort of comes up enough to sort of, figure out what you're doing with all of these removal spells. And it's a different mindset that I sort of bring to it. That's the way that I tend to play. I just don't value counter spells that much. I can see their value and their worth when somebody uses them in a proactive way, or in a way, again, that is, simply waiting for the best spell to counter, rather. That's the best thing to do, a lot of the time, and it does take quite a bit of experience to do that. When you've only got so many counter spells, you really got to know what to counter and whether you can afford to let something resolve or not, and things like that. I think it's a lot more different with some people who play counterspells. They're just like, oh, if I can counterspell it, I'll counterspell it, because I don't care. I don't care if it's a 1/1, I'm countering it. Whatever it is, I'm countering it. No, counter. That to me isn't real removal. Don't worry about the small stuff or the stuff that doesn't really matter, again, because eventually, again, like, in my opinion at least, you shouldn't be running too many. Now, it's a bit different with counter spells in your deck, because you might want to see more of them in terms of how much removal you need, because again, it's a little bit less consistent. You've got to be able to respond to things on the stack more so, rather than you can have it at any time during the game and just be happy with it. unless you've got a lot of bounce effects. And bounce effects I would class somewhat as removal as well, but I would class them as half removal. It does depend. Like Cyclonic Rift is clearly a board wipe most of the time, so that bounce effect is, removal in a sense. But again, if you've got 7 bounce spells and 7 counter spells in your deck doesn't have 14 removal spells, really. You know, uh, you know, that's how I would look at it. If you have Pongify and I can't remember the other one, the other 1 mana one. But like if you have those, I would count those in your removal slot because they just kill a thing. Same with Reality Shift, it just kills a thing. So those effects I would count in your removal slot 100%. But when you start saying, well, the counter spells, well, yes, in certain decks, but in other decks I wouldn't count them. But again, it does depend on, once you start getting into more colors, you have more options. But when you get into more competitive metas and whatnot, it tends to be more counterspell heavy because you need to respond to things before they resolve, because a lot of the things that people are playing in those high powered metas are either going to get them so far ahead that they're going to be able to parlay a win off of those pieces, or that those pieces will literally be half of a combo, or a combo in of themselves. So that means that you really need to be able to interact with those pieces as much as possible. And in those metas, you want to run a lot more counterspell based removal, because that's how that meta works out and whatnot. That's how it works. To me, it would be boring because, again, I'm sitting with all of these counterspells in my hand, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do with all of this counterspells. Where's some stuff that I can actually progress the game and I can actually affect what's going on and actually try to win the game. I'm very proactive in the way I want to play, so I'm not very good at playing control. That's why I don't really like playing counterspells. Yes, removal is controlled in a sense, but to a sense, at least those people get to play their spells. They don't just end up in the graveyard without them resolving or whatnot. At least you can do something with your cards for a couple of turns until, the point at which I actually have to go, okay, cool. You've nearly killed my other 2 opponents and you're not looking too healthy either. You know what I can do? I can get rid of most of your stuff and look, oh, cool, 2 or 3 people are dead all at once. That's sort of, my proactive, approach to, playing the game. I don't want to sit there with all of this counter magic in my hand and be like, oh, well, what am I doing with this? I'm not trying to protect a combo, and I'm not literally going to counter every single thing. Yeah, sure, I'm going to counter their Craterhoof Behemoth if it's coming down or whatnot, things like that. But again, there's just not enough times I find that it's relevant. You're just finding all of these random mana dorks and enchantments and whatnot, and some of them can be, worth removing, but it's not until they're a real problem. And again, to a degree, they kind of don't do anything without the other cards that are in the deck. So, the enchantments that are out there need the, other pieces for them to work. The artifacts need the other pieces for them to do their thing. So Panharmonicon is a good card and it can do some good things, but if you don't have any creatures that are doubling, their enter the battlefield effects, then that card doesn't really do that much. You can run, I know a few people who run, Torpor Orb and some of these other effects that say enter the battlefield effects don't happen. But again, that's a bit dull. I actually want people to play the game. And again, when you're looking at counter spells, that's kind of the same thing. You're basically saying none of the card's effects that you were casting affect anything, essentially. Your card has no text, it just says use time walk yourself, essentially. Because I've played this card that says you time walk, essentially. So now it's my turn, or whatnot. Or do you have anything else? No. Okay, cool. My turn. That's just always seems to be the big blowout, that somebody casts something for 5 or 6 and somebody counters it for 2. And it's like, that's a real mana advantage. And that's one of those things where, again, you're getting a removal spell, you're getting a 1-for-1 removal spell, and, that's not great, because 1-for-1 removal isn't great in Commander, because, again, you've got 2 other opponents or whatnot that didn't go down a card, essentially. You've gone down a card, and the opponent that you countered has gone down a card. So it's a lot harder in Commander to count counter spells as removal in that regard as well. So it is hard. Once again, as I said, sort of when you get into other colors, you get much more options, and it does depend again on where you're playing and who you're playing and what sort of power level you're playing. So in the end, it's hard to say whether counter spells count to your removal slot. I think it depends, again, if you sort of push yourself to saying, well, this is my only option, or it feels like my only option because I want to play that controlling sort of role, or that's what I like. I only like interacting with things if they're on the stack. I don't want to let my opponent get the chance to wreck me. But again, it's one of those things where even if it can wreck me, okay, cool, that's fine. That means it can wreck my other 2 opponents. And I'd rather my opponent be able to cast their spell and then make the right decision by attacking one of my opponents, So that's just where I kind of fall in this, and where I kind of remind people, yeah, sure, counter spells are good. And some people sort of, when you classify a board wipe and you say, well, a counter spell stops it, yeah, sure, but so does something that says give your team indestructible, essentially. So is a indestructible spell or a counter spell better? They're both 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, because in a way, if the board wipe goes off, then everything's destroyed. And mainly, the thing is, if you're the threat with mainly big board, then of course you don't want that to happen. But if your opponents still have a big board, then I think that the giving your team indestructible spell is slightly better. So there are cases where the counter spell actually isn't the best card to play, because, again, yeah, sure, it can deal with the problem of this board wipe going to kill all of your creatures. Now, if you're in certain colors and you don't have access to some of these things, it's a little bit more difficult. But again, for the most part, the effect is still the same in that regard, because you keep your board and your opponents lose their boards. Now, of course, the player who perhaps casts this board wipe, it does depend on what other mana they've got and what other cards they've got. They could follow up from that board wipe or whatnot, but they might not be able to, or they might not be able to follow up with anything significant. So, again, I would think about them. It does depend, again, on many factors, and it's not for me to tell you whether you should play or shouldn't play counter spells. It's up to you to decide whether counter spells fit the role of what your deck's trying to achieve in the game. I would keep counter spells in if you have a combo, or if you are trying to stop somebody's combo. 100%. You know this person plays this deck, and in that deck they have a bunch of combos and whatnot. They have a combo that you really have to stop dead in its tracks, before it gets going, because it's just impossible to stop otherwise. Things like that. I know there's some things that are just really obnoxious to deal with, like shroud on all of the enchantments, and then it's just very hard to get rid of them, and indestructible on all the enchantments and things like this. There's different things that do that. It's really somewhat annoying, so some people just say, well, I'll just counterspell the enchantment that actually does that before it resolves, so that they don't have to deal with it, because otherwise it's just too difficult to destroy or exile or do anything to the enchantment once it's on the field. So it's certainly got its pros, and they've certainly got their pros and cons. As I say, so it's not always the right call 100% all the time, but it's not always the wrong call 100% all the time. And the thing is, it will depend again on the player who is playing it. It's not like everyone just wants to play the same way. Again, as I say, I don't want to play that way. I don't tend to like playing that way. And I know some people are in the same boat. They just go, well, I don't really know what I'm doing playing these counter spells, and I don't know whether I should counter that or shouldn't I counter it, or shouldn't I? And how much mana do I have to leave up every single turn, and what am I actually doing, progressing my own game plan, or just sitting here just countering everything? Do I have to leave up all my mana just to do nothing? But yes, anyway, pretty much that's all I've got to sort of discuss about this subject here for today. I hope this has been informative and helpful, and sort of giving you some things to consider about using counterspells in your deck, and whether you should count them as removal. Again, as I say, it does depend. So, again, guys, you can count those spells as removal, certainly in certain decks, and again, in certain metas, I would definitely count them as removal. But again, there are always other options. Blue isn't just for counter spells, and I certainly think that there are other options in other colors. But if you are stuck to maybe mono blue, then I would certainly be not unhappy to have a few counter spells in that deck. But I certainly think there are other options as well. So, and I would still be fairly sparing with having too many counter spells, but it does depend on the meta in which you are in. So if you're in a more, combo heavy CDH style meta, then I certainly would think you would run many more counter spells, as many as you possibly can. But anyway, guys, yes, let me know what you think about counter spells as part of your removal suite. Write all your opinions right down there in their comments below, and let me know. Please remember that the success of channels like this is based on viewers like you, so please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing if you would like to support this content. You can also get social with us on our Discord and on our Facebook. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. All links are in the description. Thank you for your support. It really means a lot. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today. And if you have, I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.